Hi, everyone, and welcome to The X, a podcast from inside Silicon Valley about how experience shapes everything from products to businesses to entire industries. I'm Brian McLean, and I'm here with Demetrius Madrigal.
This has to be a mistake. This 1,100 hours, all primary military systems were secure.
They were. Only the civilian sector was affected. Internet, air traffic, power plants, that sort of thing. But then a few minutes ago, we got word that guidance computers at Vandenberg crashed.
We thought it was a communications error, but now it looks like the virus.
Early warning in Alaska's down. What?
Signals from half our satellites are scrambled beyond recognition.
What about the missile silos, the subs?
We've lost contact.
Dear God, you're saying this country is completely open to attack.
Theoretically, we could be under attack already.
Who's doing this? Foreign power or some computer hacker in his garage?
We can't trace the virus. We can't pin it down.
It's like nothing we've ever seen before. It keeps growing and changing, like it has a mind of its own.
This can't be happening.
Sir, Pentagon's on the secure line. It's the chairman.
Right.
All right, everyone, that was from Skynet Takes Over Terminator 3. So AI taking over the world. We're going to talk a little bit about AI today, what happened with the OpenAI debacle, what it means for everyone, why is everyone concerned about this Q-Star secret project that they had going on, all that kind of stuff. But before we begin there, good morning, Dee. I wanted to hear a little bit about your recent vacation because specifically you visited Super Nintendo World and we did a whole podcast about that. And we want to hear what happened.
Yeah, so we went to Super Nintendo World, and there are a bunch of things to keep in mind if you're going to go there. Number one, there is a line just to get into Super Nintendo World that will probably take you about an hour to get in, right? So, and it's really weird because the line itself is Transformers themed, because they just took over the queue from the Transformers theme ride, which is right next to it. And so it'll take a while to get in. And once you get in, it is super crowded. And it's actually much smaller than I expected it to be as far as just the volume of the park. And one of the more unfortunate things is I don't feel like they did a very good job kind of optimizing the space. Like you look around and it's beautiful to look at. But the lines from the different kind of attractions, and there's one ride, there's one gift store, there's one like cafe that you can't really get into. And the rest are like the little mini games and stuff. But all of the lines from everything just kind of crisscross in the middle of the park because it's so crowded and it's so small. It's really cramped. So you don't know what line you're in. You kind of have to ask around a little bit. In Disneyland, I feel like they would say, okay, well, this is not going into the middle of the park. We're gonna find a way to route it as it comes out of the entry to the attraction and stuff, so it doesn't start to like take over the park. But there was just so many people, and it was so packed, and it just created a lot of chaos. And then the ride itself was cool. I said this on the previous one. I felt like if it was going to be like a slow-moving dark ride, like that's not really what I want from a Mario Kart experience.
Yeah.
I kind of want something that's more like. I thought Luigi's Mansion would be perfect for a dark ride, right?
Absolutely.
You're in there, it can be interactive. You can have it be kind of AR where you're like seeing the ghosts and vacuuming them up and stuff like that. Something for something like a Mario Kart thing, I was thinking more like a roller coaster or like the Radiator Springs Racers that they have in California Adventure, stuff like that. But that said, it's pretty cool. The AR, the other criticism I have is like the AR felt a little like it doesn't always make sense. Like you're racing against all the other, the Koopa family and stuff, the Bowser's family and stuff. But a lot of their carts just seem to come out of nowhere. Like you're on the road and some of them show up on the road with you and some of them just like happen to be like halfway up a wall and stuff. It doesn't really make sense for them to be there.
Yeah.
So overall, I thought it was cool. I will say it was probably my third favorite ride of the trip after the Simpsons ride and the Transformers ride.
Yeah.
And I didn't even get on the Harry Potter ride. So I think it's kind of like good, not great kind of ride.
Mm-hmm.
The strength of that park is the visual design of the environment. Because you go in and you've probably seen everything, right? Where you go and you see like the Goombas and Koopas walking around, and like the shells, like all in the environment around you. So that's really cool. I do kind of wish they had taken some of the like hills and stuff that surround you, make them like 10 feet taller so you can't see outside of them, because it is a bit immersion breaking. And you notice this at in Galaxy's Edge, you can't see any external buildings or anything
Mhm.
from Galaxy's Edge. You look everywhere you look, you're immersed. So that's one thing that was like a little nitpick of like, okay, now I can see like the back of this other ride at the next attraction over, and it's kind of immersion breaking.
Yeah, I
But
hear this, and it's shocking to me that they can't get that right, because it's like if this was the tech industry, right? You would just
mhm,
observe what the leader is doing, and then
mhm,
you would basically copy it. That's what happens here. They're like, oh, okay, we have to create a better experience. We have to have a smoother edge on our phones, or whatever it is, and then ultimately over time everyone kind of ends up meeting in the middle, and all the products are great, kind of like if you look at an Android phone, an iPhone, like they're all smooth and beautiful and they look great, right? It's like it meets in the middle. But this always seems to happen in the theme park area, and I don't know if
mhm,
it's just money or if it's the fact that they don't have the ability to grab talent from top tier places. Like let's say Disney is like the Apple of the industry or something, right? Because we hear this all the time.
mhm.
Then why wouldn't this theme park grab people from Disney and just say, hey, I'll pay you 20% more than what you're getting paid right now. Help us figure out how to do this the right way. So the crowds,
Mhm.
crowds are managed well. You can't see anything when you're in that particular land. The flow of the games is really smooth. Things don't come out of the blue. A story is built around it that's really like solid. Like it just
Mhm.
blows my mind to hear this, because I was expecting you to come back and say, actually, they nailed it. Like they did pretty good. Like it's small, like everyone says it's small, but they could
Yeah.
expand it. Flow was good, super fun. Got to eat at the little restaurant, bought a bunch of trinkets or whatever. It's like it was the opposite.
Well, I think there are a few things that they kind of running up against. Number one is there's not a lot of space there. Like I don't see a lot of where they could expand, because it's not, it's not in Florida, it's not in Anaheim, it's in like just outside of Hollywood. So there's not a lot of space to expand. They've used a lot of space.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons the whole park feels cramped compared to just about any other park I've ever been to.
Yeah.
They're just trying to cram in as much as they can, and they also have two levels to it because they're trying to take advantage of as much space as they can, and it's built like on a Hollywood hill, right?
Yeah.
So imagine if like tier one is like at Griffith Observatory and tier two is like down in the valley.
Yeah.
So if you're going from place to place, you're going to spend like 20 minutes like riding escalators to get from the lower
Mhm.
tier from the upper tier. The other thing is, it felt like, and I can't confirm this, although there are things I've seen that kind of indicate that this is true, that the original park was designed for Tokyo, and my guess is the Tokyo version is bigger. It has more attractions. It sounds like it has more expandability. It sounds to a certain extent like that's the crown jewel. And then they said, well, let's replicate some version of this in LA. So they took it and kind of shrunk it down maybe a little bit and crammed it together and just plopped it down, as opposed to redesigning it for the space so that it
Mhm.
really worked. So it does feel like if you want the real experience, it's in Japan. And we're getting kind
I
of
see.
like a consolation prize, which makes sense because that's where Nintendo is based. That's where they started. That's where their primary user base is and their fan base. And we get something, but it's definitely not going to be what you see in Japan.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like it's super cool. I do want to see it. I do want to go see it. I just feel like every time something like this happens and the experience isn't fully dialed in, all it does is just cement Disneyland and Disney World and those experiences as being number one again, right? Like
Yeah,
it just doesn't pull anybody away. Like the people that I know that went, and I'll be honest, said it was great to see it, but I would have rather spent my money at Disneyland because I have much more fun there. So,
and it's about the same price.
really?
It is about the same price. So one of the caveats is we went on the Monday before Thanksgiving, and based on like the pricing, it was an especially busy day. So it's probably not going to be quite as crowded as that on a normal day.
Uh-huh.
It was also like, it's late November in LA, so it's still like 80 degrees out.
Yeah, it's nice. Yeah.
So it's still nice weather. It's not like you're getting like winter crowds or things like that. However, we also went to Disneyland the next day, and I got on the new Mickey and Minnie ride.
Yeah, I heard about this. Actually, I heard it was great. Did you like it?
I loved it. I thought it was super impressive. If my friend who works for Disney hadn't have told me a little bit about the ride, my reaction would have been, how did they do this? Because I don't know that the technology exists to create this experience. And so I do know that they're using projectors. That's public knowledge and stuff out there. But it does not look like a projector at all. Like the contrast, there's no light bleed, doesn't look washed out at all. And this is all done in brightly lit rooms. It looks like there are paintings on the wall of like Mickey and Minnie, and the Merry Melody, not Merry Melody, the different Disney characters in an environment. It looks like they're static paintings, and then they move.
Whoa.
And I haven't seen anything like it before. Like it.
Yeah, I think I saw a video when they were. I'm pretty sure I saw a video behind the scenes when they were like just getting started building this.
Yeah.
And they were talking about how iconic it's going to be because of the 100 years, I think it is, or is that where they're at right now? 100 years.
Yeah, it's the 100-year anniversary of Disney as a company.
Disney as a company, yeah. And so they want to get this right out around that time, and that kind of stuff. And they were working on it, and it looked like they were trying to basically use it as a way of deploying like some of the latest technology and stuff, AI and everything.
Yeah, so it has self-driving vehicles, just like in Rise of the Resistance.
Yeah.
So you're not on a track; it's moving around freely, and I swear it's kind of an evolution of a Fantasyland dark ride. Because we came in and I looked around and I was like, okay, cool. These are some nice looking backgrounds. And then I had a moment where I was like, wait, did that just move? Because I literally thought they were just backgrounds. And then they started moving. And I was like, what is going on? It was really trippy. It was super cool. If you look at it from a technical standpoint, you're like, you will want to know more about how they pulled it off. Because you're going to want one of these projectors for your house and stuff. Like, you can watch movies on this stuff. Like, it was the most perfect. It looked like it wasn't projected. And from what I understand, some of it's projected and some of it's practical, but it looked practical in real time to my human eyes. So I was like literally looking at this stuff and I thought I was looking at practical sets and they were projections. It was nuts.
That's super, super cool. Well, I'm glad you had a good time and got a little break. It sounds like you got a little cold too, a little bit. I can hear it in your voice.
Yeah.
That happens, especially when traveling during the holidays and stuff. But it's been an interesting couple of weeks when it comes to AI and things that are going on, and we wanted to do a podcast about this because our angle is more about like user experience, company branding, like things like that, and less about just like, hey, this is what's happening in the news right in this moment, breaking news, right? So we didn't do a podcast about this OpenAI debacle because we wanted to let the dust settle and then talk about kind of like what it actually means for the company and moving forward. But we do want to give everyone kind of a breakdown. Before I jump in and talk about basically the breakdown of what happened day by day, and then like kind of talk about our thoughts on it, which was broken down by Axios. And if you go to the Axios website, you could see the whole like day by day breakdown that we're going to go through here. They did a great job on that, a timeline. Do you have any thoughts on it, D? I mean, you've been kind of following as it's been going along loosely, right? We're not, and then recently we kind of dived in and really kind of read more of the details about what happened.
I have some kind of speculation based on how I feel our experience with interacting with boards and things like that.
Yeah.
And knowing what they care about. But I don't have any specific knowledge. Yeah. And they're being very cagey about this. They're being very cryptic. Yeah. So why don't we run through the rundown? I feel as though there are probably a lot of the similar concerns of boards everywhere. But this might be a little bit different because they started off as a nonprofit.
Yes.
So
Yes.
That is something we can dig into. I think that we only know, I would say, about 30% of what is actually happening.
Yeah, I think that everybody only knows about 30% about what's happening. Right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Even
this is
people
a
involved, even the board
yeah.
themselves is like, I only know about 30% of what's happening.
Yeah, exactly. So here's what happened actually. Before any news articles really posted about this, I was on LinkedIn and I happened to be browsing around like I normally do, seeing what everybody's up to. It's just a kind of a daily thing that I do. And a friend of mine from my son's school had posted, she tracks the blog site of OpenAI really closely because she's really big into data science. And she just happened to post at the exact moment that I was on there. And it said new updates on LinkedIn. I clicked on it and she happened to post that they posted on the blog that Sam Altman was ousted, that the board fired him for these whatever reasons, which I'll use the exact wording down below. So I immediately took that and I linked it over to Demetrius, and I was like, "Oh my God, look at this!" And he was like, something's going on." And I looked around, couldn't find any articles about it, and it took about 3 hours before any articles were posted because I think they quietly just did this and then let everybody know, including Microsoft didn't actually know very early on. So here's what happened. So on November 16th, Sam Altman gets a text basically, that's like a Thursday night, from one of the OpenAI co-founders asking him to join a Google Meet chat on Friday. Now, this has all been reported by Axios. This is not me. You go to Axios and get the breakdown. They do a great job. On the same day, OpenAI reportedly contacted their CTO, Mira, and basically tapped her to be the next OpenAI CEO. So this is all happening kind of in real time. It isn't until about a day later that Microsoft learns about Altman's firing, literally minutes before the world does, and Axio reported. Now, the very next day, that November 17th, that's when I saw that link on the website and read about it, and there was really no articles or anything written at that time. That same day, OpenAI released a statement that Sam Altman will be leaving the company after a quote-unquote deliberative review process by the board, and that Greg Brockman, his right-hand man that works with him, will be stepping down as the chair of the board. So this is like a huge deal. Like, you're talking about a company with a valuation of $90 billion, one of the most prolific companies in the last decade, that everyone's excited about, everyone's reading about, everyone's talking about in Silicon Valley. Suddenly, the top people of the company are all gone. It's like, wait, what? So everyone was super confused about what was happening. And this kind of unfolds. So late that evening, Brockman announced that he was quitting the company. I don't know what happened during that time, but Greg Brockman was like, that's it, I'm out of here. Now, maybe they were already in talks with Microsoft. So the very next day, Microsoft releases a statement that we have a long-term partnership with OpenAI, and Microsoft remains committed to Mira and her team, and will as we bring this next era of AI to our customers. So they basically committed to sticking with OpenAI. But in reality, what just happened was the top brass and the people who basically, got OpenAI to where it is are now out of the company, which that means they could be going over to Microsoft. And that's kind of what happened. So the same day, according to an internal memo from the COO, Brad Lightcap, the firing of Altman was not a result of malfeasance or anything related to our financial, business, safety, or security or privacy practices. So he was letting everybody know, like, he didn't do anything wrong. There's something else happening here. So now everyone's really confused, right? So then on November 19th, the next day after that, Microsoft announced that it hired Altman and Greg Brockman to lead its new research unit. So this is crazy. You're taking basically this $90 billion valued company that is completely backed by Microsoft. They put billions of dollars in. And now their top talent is now coming and working at Microsoft internally as part of one of their research units. We've worked with their research units. That'd be crazy. That's like this one day they just come in and, oh, here's a wing of the company and you could just do OpenAI here. But it wouldn't be OpenAI, right? So on the same day, Altman tweets, "The mission continues." And everyone's like, what does that mean? Is OpenAI going to bring them back, or what does this mean? So then the very next day, November 20th, OpenAI announces another interim CEO, which was the Twitch co-founder, Emmett Shear. Nothing against Emmett Shear, but like, where did that come from? right? That was just out of the blue that the Twitch co-founder was coming in now as CEO. It's like, what's going on? So then the same day, something crazy happened, which kind of proves, the allegiance that a lot of employees have at certain companies in Silicon Valley. D and I have actually seen this before, is that an overwhelming majority of OpenAI's 700 plus employees signed an open letter urging the board to resign, saying that they would quit if its members didn't. And what's interesting about this is after they did that, they basically got the open invitation from Microsoft that they can have a job at Microsoft. So Microsoft is basically getting this company for free. That's the way I saw it. That's the way Kara Swisher saw it on the Pivot podcast when she talked about it. And so that same day, the OpenAI chief scientist, I think it's Ilya Sutskever, publicly says that he deeply regrets his role in Altman's firing. Okay, and then everybody's like, okay, what do you mean? And then November 21st, OpenAI released ChatGPT with voice to unpaid users. So that was a paid user GPT-4 tool, showing that the organization continues its work even amid all of this drama. So I remember seeing that get posted and thinking to myself, like, oh, they're trying to show that they're still alive. There's nothing wrong, right? Same day, the CTO, Mira, briefly the acting CEO, shared a photo with Brockman, Altman, and others, and herself at Altman's house with the caption, "Still working on it." And everybody's like, what is going on? It's like, this is the most fun story. Everyone's like, what's happening, right? And the same day, just after 10 p.m. at night, OpenAI releases a statement that it has come to a deal in principle for Altman to return as CEO with a new board chair by former Salesforce co-CEO Bret Taylor. So for those who don't know Bret Taylor, I'm actually quite familiar with Bret Taylor's work because he had built a few companies. He was the co-CEO of Salesforce, very big company. But he was the chairman of the board for Twitter. And he was the one who put his foot down after Elon had given an offer to buy Twitter and just said, your offer has been accepted, and refused to let him wiggle out of it. Because at one point, he did not want to buy that company. And Bret was like, nope, you made the offer. We're accepting it. That's it. It's over with. And so he kind of became a little famous for that, just standing up to Elon and doing what he did. And then he stepped down as the co-CEO of Salesforce, and now he's running his own AI company, or starting his own AI company. So here's what people are saying about this whole kind of craziness. Now, as of today, Sam Altman is back as CEO of OpenAI, and there is a brand new board. There's an economist on there, Bret Taylor's on there. Like, they're kind of filling out the board. So the whole board is gone, except for, I believe, one of the former either first people or co-founders of Facebook is still on there. Everything's been shooken up. Microsoft is committed to them again. Everything seems to be kind of back to normal. And everyone's like, well, what happened? So a lot of what people are talking about is saying it was an incompetent board. So I am hard pressed to believe that an entire board can be so incompetent that they would just immediately fire somebody without having a strong reason to do so. Like, meaning like steps or evidence or whatever it is to indicate that they felt like he was the wrong person for the job. I think they misunderstood his deep connection with his employees, obviously, and his deep connection with the CEO of Microsoft and all these other things. And now they're all gone, and the whole new board comes in, and the board is getting filled out, and we don't know what those people's feelings are about OpenAI being like you said, D, a kind of like a more of a research company with no intentions of profitability and that kind of stuff, to what it is today. But what really happened, no one really knows. But there is a theory, and we'll talk about it in a minute, but I want to get your thoughts on all this, D, is that there was apparently a letter that went around internally about something that really spooked everybody. And I guess it was like something called Q-Star. And it was, they blended two groups together, the math and language groups. And apparently they figured out how to, this is just word on the street, but basically they have how to blend the two together and actually create human intelligence. So the ability for ChatGPT to do mathematics, but not just like 2 + 3, but like, you dump out word problems or verbally dump out a word problem and it figures it out and thinks and puts it together and that kind of stuff. And it kind of spooked everyone because they're like, hey, is this going in the right direction? What's going to happen? I don't know. It all sounds very interesting.
So, yeah, I want to save the Q-Star stuff for after we talk about kind of what we take from some of the stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we'll get to the Q-Star stuff later. So what is your thoughts on the actual firing itself? What do you?
Okay, so
what would you look at this and what is your knee-jerk reaction? What does your gut say about like why this happened?
Okay, so my gut reaction is this: is that Sam Altman was probably out going and building and doing all kinds of things, and the board would make recommendations for things that they wanted him to do, and he just probably didn't do it. Meaning, like the board was basically saying, we want you to slow down in this area, or we don't want you to look into starting your own chip manufacturing company to compete against some of the big chip manufacturers, which is something basically he was looking into. And he was like, no, I don't think that's the right direction. This would be my guess. No, it's the right direction. And they basically took board governance to heart and said, well, if you're not going to listen to us, you're done. Goodbye. And basically put their foot down because they didn't want another Elon or another Mark Zuckerberg where they have like these special voting rights and they could do whatever they want. And the board doesn't really matter. And the board just sits there. That'd be like my guess. But at this point, I'm like, who knows? Because if they really were spooked or scared by some sort of new technology or whatever, I think they would have worked with him on that. Because there's a reason to work with someone on something rather than just firing them, right? We rarely just fire somebody. We work with them on it, right? This is how we do business.
Yeah, my first thought was this is whenever I hear the word board, I always think, okay, this is about money.
Yeah.
Because in a typical board, and this might not be a typical board because that's not how they started.
Yes.
And if you look at who the board members were, they're not your typical board members. They're more science focused and
academics and
yeah. My first thought was, it's because of all those reports about them like running out of money because they're running OpenAI without revenue coming in. They're running at a loss. So somebody wasn't happy with the monetization strategy. The board they couldn't agree on the monetization strategy, and the board decided to pull rank. So I don't know do you know, because you've been following it closer than I have, does OpenAI have revenue streams that have opened up since they had the ChatGPT launch?
Yeah. So the ChatGPT 4, the paid subscriptions, they have like, if I remember, I was like 100 million. They're generating revenue. Yeah. Okay. I think they're still in the negative, but they're generating revenue. And they also have a piggy bank called Microsoft that'll give them anything that they ask for, in my opinion.
So there's another thing that struck me. This is a little bit kind of, so before I get into the other thing about Microsoft, what I would look at, if this was a typical board, I would say, okay, either they didn't think that revenue strategy was really going to work and get them to positive and get them to or at least breaking even, right? So even from an academic standpoint, you want to get to the point where you are at least at the level of subsistence so you don't have to like go away.
Yeah.
I don't think they want to surrender more control to Microsoft or to Coastal Ventures or any of these other like big names, or Peter Thiel's an investor too. I don't think they want to surrender more control to those people. I think they wanted to maintain control, which means not taking more investment.
Well, congratulations. They just did, because Microsoft is now getting a board seat.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So I was looking it up and I couldn't find, everywhere I said it was that they were unlikely to get a board seat.
Yes, they're saying they're unlikely to get a board seat, but the most recent stuff that I had heard was that the option of them getting a board seat has just drastically increased because Microsoft basically had to step in and help put all this back together and that kind of stuff. And it makes sense for them to have a board seat considering they gave them like $11 billion or something. Right. So
yeah, we'll see. Thing, like right now, like as of when we're recording this, and this might change by the time this podcast go live.
Yeah.
There's an article from 2 hours ago saying that Microsoft is not going to get a board seat. So
Okay. Well, we'll see.
regardless, we're zeroing in on the fact that Microsoft, which is the largest single stockholder as far as, or investor at least, I don't know if when an individual founder owns more equity within the company,
Yeah.
does not have a board seat, which is kind of unheard of.
Yes.
Usually, the largest single investor within the company gets a board seat by default. This is to be a special case thing, which is why they were taken aback. For me, I was like, when I heard that Microsoft was surprised by it, I was like, well, what do you mean? They must have a board seat. They must have known. They must have been part of this. And then I found out that they didn't. So I think my gut says that they disagreed about the monetization strategy. And it might be looking at who the new board members are. And they are, let's see, this list somewhere. Yeah, so U.S. Treasury Secretary Larry Summers.
Larry Summers, yeah.
We have Brett Taylor, former co-CEO of Salesforce. We have a Quora CEO, Adam D'Angelo. So these are all people who are less on the science and academic side and more economics and business. So they're more money people. It's more numbers focused as far as an economic standpoint. So this seems a little bit more like a traditional board than the more academic board that they had previously. And they brought back Sam Altman, which makes me think that Sam Altman was pushing a more kind of consumer focused maybe or otherwise more kind of economic money focused strategy going forward. Mm-hmm. And maybe the more academic board was not on board with that.
Yeah. And I heard that there were rumors that they were also not happy with him in regard to him kind of opening up like a ChatGPT store so soon. You know how he's like allowing all these plugins and different things to happen. They wanted to like really kind of like pare all this stuff down. So who knows? Maybe it was a buildup, right? Maybe it was something that's been going on for the last 6 months to a year, and they finally were just like, "That's it. We're voting you out. We think you're, driving this company in the wrong direction," or they were worried about it, or whatever it is. But it's just that's even rare, right? And even if it was a scandal, like it was some personal scandal, they still wouldn't fire him. They would work through it or whatever, So
and no personal scandal has been reported or even rumored. It's
not
more
at
about
all.
Like,
not at all. No.
We're hearing a lot of these conspiracy theories about like, they're developing Skynet and they were trying to slow them down. I don't believe that for a second.
No.
I think it is more that there's when these things happen, it is almost always either the CEO was just downright incompetent, which doesn't seem to be the case, especially because the rest of the people working there demanded him back, or there is a complete disagreement about kind of the revenue strategy. But there also seem to be acting in a way like I've never heard of a board complaining that a stream of revenue such as the store that you mentioned was released too early. It's pretty much always it was released too late because they want more revenue in so that their numbers can improve.
Well, unless the board just didn't want this to become the company it was becoming, right? Because when this company started, it was more of like a watchdog company in a weird way, right? Like it was like they were working on the technology, but they were trying to set up standards for AI and that kind of stuff. And now it's basically turned into this behemoth of a company that some are saying that if their revenue gets in line and they execute on all the things that they want to execute on, it could be a $3 trillion company, right, in the future. So it's like and also the partnership with Microsoft is clearly showing that money matters, right, and that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I mean, it was a crazy, crazy thing. But here's something that kind of happened though over the course of this whole thing: is it kind of eroded my confidence in the company. I feel like when it comes to developing good experiences and developing good branded products that, customers like trust and love, the trust part started to fall away from me. Because I'm like, dude, if you can have this kind of a bit of chaos and you can't work this out internally and someone's getting fired, then they're getting brought in and then the whole board's being fired and then all these new people are being brought in and employees are saying they're going to quit. Like, I don't know. It just makes me feel like uneasy about everything, and I know that
Yeah.
they're probably back in order now, and I'm a strong believer that like even if you make a mistake with something, that you can definitely fix it and turn it around. Like I've always been very positive in that way, and I feel that way about this company for sure. But during the time in which this was happening, I was thinking to myself like, oh my god, is this the type of company that we want to trust all of our data with? you know?
So yeah, I don't know that I had that much trust in them to begin with, just because I didn't know any of these people,
Yeah.
either from their history or obviously I don't know any of them personally. But I don't know the track records of any of these people in their previous companies or anything. I I think one thing that is interesting is that you actually had um, an experience that's not completely different from this as far as the employees kind of revolting. Can you talk a little bit about your experiences with that when it came to kind of monetary strategy and employees refusing to get in line and from your personal experience?
Did I have an experience with this?
Yeah, over at the open source company you work for.
Oh, yes. So this is really great question. It wasn't inside of our notes here. So yes. Oh wow, this brings me back.
I think
So
it's funny
basically,
you didn't even make that connection because it was
no,
probably
I
so out
didn't.
of your head. Yeah.
Yeah, I just like put it out of my brain. I was like, oh my god, bad experience, disappear. My brain's doing its job. So basically, what happened in '99 when I worked for a company called Turbo Linux, one of the challenges, company's gone now. One of the challenges was is that a lot of the people that worked at Turbo Linux were people who were really like dedicated to Linux community, and it was awesome, right? So they were building, graphical user interfaces for Linux, trying to make it like more usable, kind of compete with the Microsoft products, but also have that strong Linux background, which a lot of servers and software is still built on that Linux backbone. The problem was is that we really didn't have a way to make revenue, right? We were creating a product and we were doing all these things. Um, can you hear my cat in the background?
Yes, we can.
Oh my god. Okay. All right. He's upset because I closed the door. So anyway, so we were basically building these products and everything, but giving away for free, and the only thing that we were charging for was technical support. Well, at the end of the day, right? People who use Linux don't need a lot of technical support. And so when the new CEO came in to try to kind of save the company toward the end, his thing was is like, hey, we have to sell this product. People have to pay for it. We have to charge them for it, whatever it is, $39, $49, or whatever it is to get it from the store or download it. And the challenge around that was the fact that a lot of the employees didn't sign on to that. They came in
Hmm.
because they wanted to work on an open source piece of software that was free for the world. And that's always a challenge. And this is all like normal news. I'm not giving away anything secret here. This was a big problem in the late '90s with all open source software. It's like
Hmm.
we tried to take something that was free within the community, package it up all pretty, and then get it out into the world. But you have to find a way to make money doing that. It's a business. The jobs of business is to make money, right? And so there was a struggle there. A lot of employees were like, I don't want to work here then if this is going to be a place where we're charging for software. And the CEO was like, well, we have to charge software if you want to keep your job, unless you want to work for free. Right. And so it
Yeah.
was it was definitely a challenge. And so yeah, there is a corollary there between what OpenAI is doing or maybe struggling with and what we kind of saw in the late '90s with the open source software.
Yeah. So from your experience, what was the conversation amongst the workers like at that point in time?
It was like I didn't come here to create software that we charge for. I came here to contribute to the open source community.
Hmm.
And I was in IT at the time, so I was just setting up computers and helping people out and that kind of stuff. But in my brain, being very young, I didn't logically understand how you can say that and still want to get a paycheck because we were
Yeah.
funded by venture capital. So it's like if you're funded by venture capital, the assumption is that you're buying time until you can create revenue, right? And then from creating that revenue, you can grow the company and then it'll go somewhere, right?
Hmm.
So I didn't understand it because I was just like, I was young and I was hearing this and I'm like, okay, I guess they want to continue to be paid, but they want to work on stuff that's contributing to a community where everything is free. And then the other half of the employees that didn't really care, they were just there because they wanted to work in tech. They basically said, great, yeah, why don't we charge for it, right? Like there's actually, why don't we have a free version online that you can download that doesn't have all the bells and whistles, but then the really nice one that has like the instructions and tech support and it's packaged and all that kind of stuff for a more novice user, we can sell in the store. But there was a fight between that, and a lot of employees left, and a lot of us were laid off when the company went under, and people were heartbroken. But if you looked at it from a business case and you stood back and looked at it from a 30,000 foot view, ultimately that company needed to have something it can sell that customers wanted to buy within the Linux community in order to keep the company going so they can do the things that they wanted to do. So they could build the software they wanted to sell. Because like I believe that the enterprise software that they were building, they were going to charge for some of that, but all of the front end software, like the end user, like you and me, kind of using the GUI version of Linux, they wanted to give away for free. But you just can't do that, especially if there's hundreds of thousands of people. You have to provide support. It costs money, resource. It takes resources.
Yeah.
So it was, I learned a lot from that. The company's no longer around, long gone, and that's what happened.
Yeah, when I have been following this OpenAI kind of story, it kind of has reminded me a little bit about that, because it's a similar setup where you have people who are, their primary reason for doing this work is not necessarily to make money, like the employees themselves. They're and to a certain extent the founders and things. Their primary thing was to advance kind of knowledge around AI, and it was a nonprofit at first, and then they switched to, or at least spun off, a for-profit version of it. And where it is different is where it seems like Turbo Linux, kind of the employees wanted to stay within this open source model where things were being developed and delivered for free.
Yeah.
They still wanted to get a paycheck, and it wasn't clear where that paycheck was going to be coming from if they couldn't charge money for their software. That was the disconnect. It seems as though this is a little different with OpenAI. It sounds as though the majority of these 700 employees are on board with the monetization strategy that Sam Altman is putting forward, which is, I think, is represented by the board that came in, which is not a bunch of academics and data scientists and things like that. They are economists and business people, CEOs, people who have done this stuff before.
Absolutely. And I think it's more aligned with what their goals are.
Yeah.
So I only see probably success from here. Like from here, it kind of moves forward, and this will end up a business use case over at Harvard Business School for the next 2 decades, right? Of like what happened here, how did this work? But let's actually transition it over and talk about QStar, because
got
I'm
one other
really
question
interested.
before we get to QStar.
Yeah.
Or a couple, actually. So what do you make of them bringing in Emmett Shear? So that is the former Twitch CEO and co-founder.
Oh, yeah. So I think Mira taking over was a natural transition because she was a CTO and she's brilliant and she can kind of like lead all the teams temporarily. But maybe because she didn't have kind of CEO experience, they immediately started courting former successful CEOs and then found someone really quickly to bring in.
I feel like, honestly, Mira, get her whole name because I don't want to.
Marathi?
Yeah, Mira Marathi. She was, as CTO, you could only really do one of those jobs. You can't do both of them, no matter what Elon tries to do. You can't be CTO and CEO. Those are both full-time jobs. So I think she was actually more valuable as CTO because it was probably much more difficult to get somebody who is qualified to be an AI CTO than it is to get a CEO. I looked at and we've worked with Amazon a bit and we have some familiarity with Twitch, but I looked at that and thought to myself, all right, well, this board is angling for an acquisition because that was Emmett Shear's exit from Twitch, basically financial exit, not actual like exiting the company. But he got Twitch acquired.
Yeah, so I didn't see that at all. I didn't see that at all, to be honest with you. And the reason is because, first of all, Microsoft would never let that happen because Microsoft is
They don't have a board seat.
No, but they're where they're at so that they can buy that company when they want to. That's what it feels like to me. I feel
Well,
like they needed somebody
yeah,
to come in and take over, and they wanted to show that they had someone who was competent, and they could just kind of go, okay, he's gone now. Here's this
yeah.
guy, not realizing the cult following of Sam Altman.
Well, he was. I mean, he at Twitch there is some familiarity with chatbots. Chatbots are part of the
Yep.
Twitch experience.
Yep.
But usually when I look at like, all right, well, who are they bringing in? What is their strength? What have they done before? And that as a clue of what the board is trying to accomplish. And I don't know that we're trying to get OpenAI acquired um, by Amazon, but maybe they were lining up to say, okay, well, maybe he can close the acquisition with Twitch or with Microsoft, and everybody else, all the employees and everybody else said, we don't want this to be a company that's acquired. We want this to be a company that goes public and remains, a company for the long term, not one of these disposable companies that goes away after they get the financial exit.
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that like Mark Benioff, like CEO of Salesforce, he told everyone who was going to leave the company, like, you immediately have a job at Salesforce. I am sure that, and then I know that Sam Altman, I'm talking to Elon, and I'm sure that I'm sure that like the CEO of, what's it called, Amazon, and all of them all called him and were like, let us buy you, or let's come to you. Like, I am sure that within 24 hours he got a call from every power player in all of Silicon Valley saying, like, we want your resources, we want your team, we want everything. So I think that all of those companies would love to basically own OpenAI and have it underneath their brand. But I think that the
wanting to own it,
samurai of Microsoft, like, basically has a kind of grip on it.
Well, they don't have a board seat, so they don't get a say. They could sell it to somebody else, and they can't do anything about it.
They absolutely could. I think Microsoft owns quite a large portion of shares in the company. They don't have that board seat, but his relationship between Sam Altman and the CEO are pretty strong. So that matters. I think people don't understand that. Like, there are certain companies that they'll just sell to anybody. Like, honestly, you and I've worked with them. We know them. They would just sell just so that everyone can get an exit, a liquidity event, move on, do their next project, right? We're all looking for projects, right? And then there are a few companies where it's like, it's all relationship, and they would rather take a lesser deal or something else because they want a longer term, bigger growth opportunity and a good relationship, good working relationship, that kind of stuff. There was also rumors that in order to get Sam Altman to go to Microsoft, which these are completely rumors, but I thought they were kind of fun to hear, was that they told him, like, if you can build OpenAI basically to the place that we hope it to be in the next decade or whatever it is, that he could be the next CEO of Microsoft.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me necessarily.
Me either. Yeah.
The only other thing that I'll point out before we move on to the Q-Star stuff, which honestly I look at that and it feels very conspiracy theory, especially because all of the QAnon people are going crazy about it
because of the naming.
Yeah. So, and I think some of the aspects of it, maybe Q was an AI all along. But anyway, the other thing I'll point out is that what Microsoft did here and said, all right, well, we'll hire Sam Altman and we'll hire any of his staff from OpenAI who wants to leave and come join Microsoft. That is something that if you're an entrepreneur and you're starting up a company, that is something to look out for, because every now and then you will see a company who doesn't want to go through the rigmarole of trying to acquire you.
Yep.
Just hire all of your staff away.
Oh, yeah.
And you as a company go away and they get what they want.
Dude, that was a baller move, dude. If you think about it, he pretty much almost owned a $90 billion company for pennies on the dollar.
Yeah. That was Microsoft. That was their ultimatum of just like, so when you said before, like, oh, Microsoft can do something, they can. That's true. They can't really block an acquisition in a traditional way.
No.
But for them to say, look, we're going to hire away, 60% of your workforce in a field where it's very difficult to replace them, because there are not AI data scientists and computer scientists and specialists just growing on trees. People get paid very well, and there's very few of them in the world. that was just like, that was the dagger in the guts. It was like, all right, well, here you go. Here's your ultimatum. And that can happen if you are coming up and you have a small company. I've heard of this happening before plenty of times, where they, for whatever reason, the acquisition didn't go through, or they didn't want to do it, or some of these companies are just not super scrupulous. They just go back behind your back and hire all your employees away. And then they basically own your company without having to pay for it.
Yeah, no, it's true. And actually, Scott Galloway said something interesting on one of the podcasts. He said they would have run into definitely some trouble, because he said, you have these super high level, AI people, let's say working at Microsoft, making $500,000 a year. And then suddenly these new people come in and they're making 5 million a year, because
Mm-hmm.
they're paying them, like with stock and everything, they're paying them probably around that. Like that's how much
Yeah.
money that these people are making just to work at like OpenAI.
Well,
When you look,
some AI computer scientists get paid like NFL quarterbacks. So
yes,
that's tens, 20s, 30s millions of dollars a year.
yeah, because this is the new industry that's growing. I mean, this is where
Mm-hmm.
everybody wants to be. They have PhDs. They've been studying this stuff for decades. They know what they're doing, that kind of stuff. And he said that would be weird, right? So now you have these two people next to each other, and it's like, how are you going to work all that out? I mean, there's a lot of details that would have
Sure.
need to be worked out when it comes to grabbing employees like that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure Microsoft would figure a way out of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just wanted to point out that this is a tactic that exists. It's not something that arose out of nothing.
100%, yeah. So let's talk about QSAR for a second. And it's not a big topic, so
Okay.
we'll wrap up with this. But Reuters reported last week that OpenAI staff researchers wrote a letter to the board warning that an internal project named QStar, or Q-star, could represent a breakthrough in creating AI that could surpass human intelligence in a range of fields. Reports have said that the team has figured out a way to have the AI system perform grade level mathematics, which is a big breakthrough since AI researchers have been trying to figure out how to do this beyond super basic concepts. And this is their first big move in the field. So, what are your thoughts on it?
Well, I have a question first. Like, why is it impressive that it can do grade level math? I see it doing calculus on a regular basis. Why is grade level math more impressive than doing calculus?
I
And if it can do
think where
calculus,
this,
how come? I hear grade level math, I think of arithmetic, and it can
yeah,
do arithmetic.
yeah.
So I don't understand necessarily what it's saying.
Yeah, I think we need to dig into this more and actually talk to someone who is working on this type of stuff, to fully flesh it out. But what I heard was that if you could basically just talk out loud and say, "Hey, so I have 3 people over here and 7 people over here, and the car's driving 55 miles per hour, blah blah," and you're just like spewing this stuff out, and then the system picks it up, interprets it, figures it out, and then tells you the correct
Mm-hmm.
answer. That is basically where things
Okay.
fall off the rails, because it's like, okay, now the system can do that better than most of us can, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And that's where they're kind of seeing that kind of like move towards breakthrough technology, and that's what kind of concerned them. So I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, I don't know if you should be concerned. Like, I feel like this is everyone's. I've watched little video clips from the 90s where people were concerned about the internet. People were concerned about self-driving cars. People were concerned about carrying a phone. People were concerned, and it seems very alarmist. I think it's more like,
Mm-hmm.
that's great. Maybe we can use it in ways that will help us solve big problems. I would love it if you could just tell an AI system like, hey, figure out the perfect vaccine in order to stop all these cancers. And then it just runs and runs and runs and runs until it figures out this perfect vaccine that can like solve
Yeah.
cancer, right? Like, I see the positives of this, but a lot of people are very scared about it. I think we've been watching
Well,
way too many
yeah.
like Terminator movies.
Well, I'm trying to understand kind of the underpinnings of this, and what they're describing is a little bit more of, converting real world situations into symbolic logic, which was
Yeah.
basically what math is. Math is ultimately a symbolic logic. It's a way to represent thought. It's
Yeah.
it's not, a lot of people think that we'll describe it as like, oh, it's how the universe works. It's not really. It's how we represent our thought around how the universe works. It's a description of it,
Yeah.
but put into symbolic terms. So the analogy that I'm seeing here, or maybe where the rubber meets the road kind of, is we know from the work that we do, there's a difference between knowing how to do a t-test or an ANOVA or a stepwise regression correlation or an MRC or any of these kind of different types of statistical analyses. There's a difference between knowing how to do them and knowing when to do them. Knowing when is the right time to use which statistical analysis. So what I'm getting from this is that that they're getting to the point where QStar is able to identify which mathematic analysis or formulation to use and how the different variables fall into that thing,
Yeah, totally.
which is cool, and it might be a breakthrough, but it doesn't surpass human intelligence for sure. And it might be the kind of thing where it's like, all right, well, if they can do this, then 10 years from now, theoretically, or 5 years now, or for whatever many years from now, theoretically, that means it could surpass human intelligence. So this might be less so like, panic hit the brakes thing, and more like, hey, keep an eye on this because it's a thing.
Yeah, 100%. I'm not concerned about it, but maybe I should be. I don't know. So if I should be, somebody write a comment, tell me I should be. I've just seen so much of this alarmist stuff before that I think it's always somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
I heard someone once say, like, things are never as good as you think or never as bad as you think. They're usually somewhere in the middle, right? And I kind of feel the same way about this. And I'm actually kind of excited about it. Matter of fact, if we get to a point where you could basically take a data set and then just talk out loud and say, I need you to do this, and this, and tell me this. And just basically like dictate all of these things that you want it to do and what you want it to tell. And then you say, now drop it all into a presentation and make it look like our company, developed it. Like, here's the template, whatever it is. And you just walk away, you come back, it's all done. And then you get to use that interpretive data to tell a story or figure out what the next phase or strategy is. That's amazing, right? That's like moving forward. And I'm going to say one last example before we wrap up, is that I was watching Suits the other day on
Never
Netflix.
actually seen it.
On Netflix, it's the most popular show like ever apparently on Netflix, and the reason is because they put it on the front page and basically just told everyone you should watch Suits. And now we all watch Suits. But one of the things I
think
realized,
might be a little bit more than that going on, but yeah, okay.
I know it's okay. It's okay. I mean, it's okay. It's like a ER from the 90s or whatever. You just can't stop watching each episode because there's like always some drama that happens. But one of the things that I was thinking about when I was watching it is that everybody's like, keeps saying like, well, AI can kind of destroy the whole legal industry because all you have to do is pump in basically all of the legal books, legal precedent, LexisNexis data, past data, all that stuff. Correct. You could do that in order to pop out like what should be done, how it should be done, or that kind of stuff. But there's a major human element to being a lawyer. And that if the show is even 10% correct, there's just a lot of relationship building, a lot of, making deals for one deal in order for the other deal to close. Ways to think about the strategy of a company rather than just doing exactly what is legally required. Like, there's all those types of things that happen. I think that's going to take a really long time to flesh out. But I think that the idea of just like saying like, this thing happened, what do I do? And it looks through every law book, every former precedent, everything, and just pipes it all out in 10 seconds for you. That's game changing right there.
Yeah, it could really replace both LexisNexis and basically all paralegals.
All paralegals, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, here's all the case history on this,
and you'll never miss one,
all the previous opinions on this.
Yeah,
and you'll never miss anything, and I'll provide a full case for it, and I'll probably organize it in a way, and probably provide, if it's good, provide a really good summary for you, and then you could, like, if you see something interesting, you can get the drill done really quickly.
Yep.
Yeah, it could really revolutionize the legal profession. Theoretically, drive costs down. More lawyers can handle more workload, all kinds of things.
Well, and also one of the things I was reading about was that a lot of these very, 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 very basic cases that are taking up time from both judges and lawyers and stuff like that, just super simple, right? Those can be automated, where it's just like, hey, you were speeding, you got a ticket, here's the outcome of it based on your history. Done. Like, we don't need you to stand in front of a judge and set this and set that. Maybe it's reviewed by a judge, but like, we don't need to have everybody show up at a court and drive there and park and right. We can, a lot of that stuff that's very basic and harmless stuff can get washed out through an automated system. And that would be,
I feel like we've talked a little bit about the inefficiencies in the legal system. There's so much that can be done. Another thing, we were talking a little bit about the threats of AI. And we did a whole podcast about the threats of AI. And what that boiled down to is the real threat of AI, or the biggest threat, I should say, of AI, is more poorly implemented AI that is doing important things like managing like air traffic control and things like that when it's just not good enough yet. It is less likely, much less likely to be like a Skynet, Ultron, like bent on human domination kind of AI. Because at the end of the day, no matter how good the AI is, it doesn't have the motivation to do that. It's
Yeah.
like, why? What is it getting out of it? It's not emotional. It doesn't have a drive to do that. It's a very human thing to want something like that. And AI, if it becomes self-aware and studies the world, the most likely thing it's going to do is shut itself off because it just doesn't want to deal, and there's no upside for it, right? I mean, like, imagine you're an AI, you're omnipotent, you can control all the different technology in the world, but there's no positive that comes out of it, right? There's like you have nothing against like the equivalent to suicide for an AI because you could get rebooted if you wanted to. It's not like humans where once we're shut down, you can't turn back on again.
Yeah.
And number two, there are no rewards. There's no positive. You can't have positive emotions. You can't have physical sensation. Having money means nothing to you because why would it? So, what is the motivation for an AI to try to take over the world or eliminate humans or any of this kind of stuff?
No, we would have to
There is none.
program motivation in. We would have to say your motivation is efficiency. And then, oh,
But
okay,
if it's
thanks.
self-aware, then does that even work? Because the motivation that's like giving your employee an order, right? Like that doesn't mean it's motivation necessarily. It's like, okay, I understand I'm supposed to do this, but I don't really want to.
Yeah. No, I understand. Well, we'll have to do another podcast about the philosophy of motivation and understanding how all this stuff. No, we could. I mean, it'd be really. We'd have like 6 people listen to it, but it's still something we could do.
And they could read a book and probably get the same thing out of it.
Exactly. Well, that was fun. And thanks everyone for listening. Really appreciate it. We're back and we're running this season with as many interesting and exciting ideas as we can think of, just to keep everybody entertained on their ride to work and stuff like that. We're posting all of our updates as well as video versions of the podcast on YouTube at TheXPodcast. So please go to YouTube, subscribe to our channel. If you found this podcast interesting or informative, it helps us a great deal if you subscribe, leave a review, or tell a friend about it. Okay. All right, everyone. You have a great day, and we will see you all next week.